Oh. Good evening and welcome to this Prairie Lake City Council meeting of Monday, January, is it the 19th? 18th, 2023. If you would please join me, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening. It's wonderful to see a nice full council chambers this evening. The first item on our agenda this evening is the forum. The forum is that opportunity for those that are before us to come and speak in front of the City Council. The only items that cannot be included in the forum are items of a public hearing, for which a public hearing has either been scheduled or for which a public hearing has taken place. So with that lone exception, this evening we're going to go ahead and limit comment to 4 minutes. What I'll do is at the 3-minute mark, I'll go ahead and hold up a single finger just indicating you have 1 minute remaining in your testimony. And if you would, bring your comments to a close. With that, we have 4 people that have signed up to be heard this evening. And the first one is Mr. Dean Swanson. Mr. Swanson, please, we look forward to hearing from you. And if you would, for the record, again, restate your name as well as your address. There's a button at the base of your microphone. It may be red now. Go ahead and press it and turn the color green. Mr. Swanson.
Thank you. Dean Swanson, 14080 Hidden View Road. I'm speaking tonight. I haven't spoken on this subject in the past. A lot of people in our neighborhood have spoken on the 42 reentry house that Scott County is trying to reoccupy. And a lot of people in our neighborhood have made a lot of good comments. I didn't really feel I had much to add. But I'm getting a little concerned, getting a little frustrated. Doing the math from what we've heard early occupation of that house as early as March of 2023, which, do the math, is only 6 or 7 weeks away. 6 or 7 weeks. That's really soon. I don't know if we've had any significant reply from Scott County on any chance of possibly shifting the focus of the occupation of the house. It was originally intended to be bulldozed for safety on Highway 42, get rid of that driveway. And now all of a sudden they've got grand plans to put a lot of people and staff and volunteers into that house. So that would be my first question, is to see if there's been any response from Scott County. There are a lot of permits going on there. There's been a lot of work that we've heard about, foundation repairs and things. I guess my other question would be, are there any problems with their permits? Is there any way we could, make sure that the permits maybe slow them down at least a little bit while we consider? I know that there's a letter of moratorium that was being drafted, but the 6 or 7 weeks timeline is really kind of getting to me. And I know some of you have already done this, but I would invite all of you to take a drive up Hidden View Road, come up that right there and just see that 42 house up on the hill, a good 30 or 40 feet elevation above the whole neighborhood, and just look at the vantage point that they have to look at our entire street, the entire neighborhood, all of the residents' comings and goings. It's on clear display. That's really all I wanted to reemphasize. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Swanson. Mr. Matt Fulton.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for the opportunity. Matt Fulton, 14080 Shady Beach Trails. I'm a new resident in town. I've had the chance to talk before you a few months ago, and because there's a lot of folks here tonight, there's a lot of interest on this particular topic. I first want to just thank the council for submitting the letter to the county. I really appreciate you recognizing the input that the residents have been having on this topic, and acting as a body to make sure that you're asking the county to reconsider the use of the property. It's unfortunate that the county hasn't responded to the letter, because it just leads to increased frustration on the whole decision point. As Dean just pointed out, timing is short, and the calendar is rapidly approaching us. I will say that our neighborhood has done just an excellent job in engaging people on the conversation, which I always think is positive. And even all the dynamics that go in this, and I've been in the business for a long time as a city manager, engagement is always a positive thing. And it takes time, and it takes diligence, and it takes patience to get through all the issues. What is unique about this property, though, is what causes so much lack of trust, or maybe the loss of trust in some of the decision-making processes. It's such an ironic set of circumstances where the county buys a piece of property for a transportation purpose, and then all of a sudden it twists around for a project that wouldn't be consistent. That's number one, not anticipated in your zoning codes, and it wouldn't have been placed there if you had the appropriate time or the ability to zone it into a location that would make sense from a neighborhood planning standpoint. So it's an unfortunate set of circumstances on where we find ourselves today. And it is a unique property. This is just not four guys joining together in a house to live. It's going to be staffed, it's going to be supervised, it's going to be operated under a contract administered by the county. This is not a typical single family, four people living together in a project. And that's what makes it such a unique circumstance that I think provides the council an opportunity to think about it a little bit differently, because it isn't provided for in your zoning code like so many different kinds of land uses are. That's the responsibility that you have as a council, to make sure that the neighborhoods are maintained in a safe way, that land uses are compatible with each other, and that the long-term growth and vitality is going to be in the best interest of the community. What's also unique about this property particularly is it's not on a bus line, it's not near any employment centers, and so it's not probably going to be a successful project as it's currently anticipated. The end result of that, in my mind, is going to be an increased level of turnover, which is something that the council already addresses in your short-term ordinances to try to manage that turnover and the impact that that has on the surrounding properties. And so when I was first here a while ago, I suggested that when I was a city manager for 30 years, when we went into this kind of situation, we would always consider, the council would always consider the implementation of a moratorium, which is simply a timeout. It provides you the opportunity to think about what the impacts are going to be on the surrounding property owners, what are the appropriate regulations that can be put into place, and so that you can bring in residents to help consider and be part of the conversation. And it will, in this particular case, allow maybe for some of the tensions and emotions to go down while you consider all of the implications, so that you can structure a project that's going to be successful for the community and for the residents that are residing in the particular property. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I know there's been a lot of behind-the-scenes conversations. I really appreciate that. I know that all the residents appreciate that. And just look forward to trying to find a resolution to this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fulton. Ms. Cassie Johnson.
Okay, one of these times I'm really going to bring a stool so I can see. I'm Cassandra Johnson. I live at 14104 Hidden View Road. You guys, I've been here, we've all been here a lot, and I'm sure it's a bit frustrating in the sense I reflect back on when you're trying to get your toddler to not do something and you get the same result over and over. I think honestly and transparently that's a little bit how I feel, and frustrated and saddened and all the emotions. And as Matt just said, like, taking that pause is what we need. We've heard your agreement, we've seen the letter that you proposed to the county, and we're so grateful for that. And yet our timeline is ticking, and time now is to take action so we can put a pause and a time to evaluate it, bring in the collaboration, rebuild the trust in order to have a successful opportunity for this house. There's a lot of different ways to go about this, and we've heard the agreement from you guys that the approach from the county was not in what we wanted and not what we anticipated. And the response of, we didn't have to tell you because it's not the law, is just bad policy, and in my opinion, not the way we should function just as humans. And so I think the time now, we've heard your verbal account to support, we've heard you support us through emails and conversations, and there's a lot of conversations going on. But now we need more action. We need help. We need your support to help come to the table with the county. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Kevin Basart.
Hi, my name is Kevin Basart. I live on Bayview Circle, and I'll keep mine short. I know it's about the re-entry home, and I do want to thank you guys for everything you've been doing. That I actually feel like you guys are listening, so I appreciate that. I appreciate your time on this. I believe communication is paramount in any kind of community project, and I feel the county has not initiated any sort of willingness to communicate or work with residents. So questions, concerns, any suggestions. So really this has completely shattered my trust with the county and doubt it'll ever be reconciled. And I really feel the way this is all started should reflect on how this operation is going to run. That's how I see it's going to run. It's if it were to be open, the consequences of their lack of due diligence would directly fall on me, my family, my neighbors, our neighborhood, our community. The city has been fantastic in communication and, again, listening to our neighborhood. But I ask that the city seriously considers that moratorium that we've been hearing tonight and really just to halt the progress until we know more, until we have more information, and really to look at what are the long-term effects. So, a proposed project like this actually succeeds versus it failing being a project that ultimately they have to turn down, and we could have stopped it before it was a failure in the first place. So I do thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Basart. Those are the individuals that we had that had signed up. Is there anyone else that would like to come before us this evening to speak on any topic at all? Sir. And again, if you would, for the record, name and address, sir.
Hi, my name is Mike Picca. I live at 14107 Hidden View Road. Spoke, I think, not last time, the time before here, so I don't know if I'm going to be really bringing anything new or anything that hasn't been already said kind of this evening, but just because I had it written down, I want to read it. So we've been here, we've all been coming to these meetings, we've consistently showed up. We all know the reasons why we don't want this to happen, but we haven't seen any action, like a ton of action really. So how do we get that? Like, how do we get more commitment to that? Like, all signs and evidence point to this being a very poor location in so many ways. No transportation. Nearest bus route is, I think, over a mile or mile and a half away. The county tried providing false information that the buses will stop if you hail them on 42, which I believe Kevin and Taylor looked up and actually called, and they said they absolutely do not do that. There's no employment opportunities nearby, really no data or evidence to support success of the short-term residency, the 30, 60, 90 days. No data supporting success of like small groups either. It's more large groups of facilities with 30 or 60 people for like a year's time. So yeah, I would maybe feel differently if there was data to support the program like this, but there's really not. And again, all data kind of supports the opposite. Frankly, I didn't save up for the last decade to be able to afford a house here and then start raising a family, only to be a part of an experiment. That's really what this is. So when we first moved or found out about the reentry plans back in October, I think there was an incident like maybe that exact week of a halfway house in St. Paul where one of the residents who was released and was deemed rehabilitated to go into society murdered 2 people, one of them a resident, another one a civilian. Then I think about a month or 2 ago, there was an incident just in Prior Lake actually, where I think it was an ex-convict, forgive me if the details are not fully accurate, assaulted a police officer, then broke into a residential home nearby, held the family at gunpoint, eventually released them, and then I think there was a standoff with the police and maybe the SWAT team was involved. So really, it only takes one mentally unstable person, with a history of violence or sexual criminal activity for something to go south, and with 16 to 40 men transitioning through this house per year, because that's basically what the math breaks out with 4 people, 30, 60, 90 days. Like, what is the likelihood that at least one of them potentially could be a bad apple? I mean, what happens if this house goes through and an incident does occur? Like, sure, you can say that person will be kicked out of this house and sent back to prison, but what about the victim? You know, like, now they have to live with whatever trauma or fear or anxiety, basically for the rest of their life. So I would ask you, like, how you would feel about something like that if that happened, if it was, you know, it was something that you knew.
Sir, if I can, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Something that, you know, that you knew you could have done something potentially to stop it. So I just, the lack of taking just like again, we appreciate everything that you have been doing in the letter, but really, I think everyone wants just a very maybe public hard stance against the county. Just the reiterating just the moratorium, just because every day that goes by, we're, you know, drag our feet is another day of continuous renovations to the house, another day closer to completion. And we all know once it's renovated and, you know, a resident moves in, there's really no stopping.
Sir, I'm going to need to ask you to conclude your comments.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I think that's about it. So again, just appreciate your time and would like if we could file on that.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to come before us? Sir, please.
My name is Todd Both, 14145 Hidden View Road. First off, we've had a lot of great comments, and I agree with a lot of what's being said there. Some of the things I have, amongst many things, I could go on for a long time, as I'm sure anybody out here could, as far as against this property being turned into this, is we've been told it's going to be funded by a number of government programs set for a certain amount of time. What happens after that time? Who's paying for that? First off, those programs are paid for by us, all of you, all of you. And then after that, they're saying what, like 5 years to generalize? And then who's paying for it? All of us, and it's basically a rental property. The county is in to a rental property. Should question us, why are they into that sort of a business? And then what, we're going to pay into it into perpetuity? And then another question that should be asked is that we should all be asking ourselves, as an investment, would any of the rest of us go and put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into a property that was bought, as it was said, under the guise of to be tore down for road work? Would we go and do that and then say, we're going to put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into something we're going to tear down? I don't, but by guilt of association, all of us now have become landlords into a property that most of us would probably say, no, we wouldn't put that money into that. We should go and find a better use for it. We should slow everything down, look at what a better investment is into things, and use that money in a better, wiser way. And that's not what is happening here. It is just not, clearer minds are just not being used here, that I think everybody here would be doing differently. And another thing is, that's not necessarily germane to what I'm talking about, is a driveway being put in onto Hidden View for not a single family dwelling unit with a couple of cars that are coming and going. It's essentially going to be the equivalent of traffic to a small convenience store down at the end of the road. Now, I guarantee you, all the rest of you, county or city people, would not want all of a sudden you buy on a quiet street and then we're going to put a convenience store down at the end of the road. That we're going to have all kinds of traffic that is not germane to the neighborhood coming and going. They don't care how fast they're going. They're just, and they're coming at all different times. And It just really needs to be slowed down and thought out, and it's all of our money. It's not the government's money. It's all of ours money that's being put into this, because the government doesn't have any money. It's us. That's who's paying for this.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to come before the council this evening and speak on any item at all? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the forum. If I could, again, I want to thank the residents for their testimony, and it does sound like certainly the knowledge of our letter, our letter, the city council's letter, indeed. Scott County owns this house. There are statutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call on Manager Waddell, and also, for the record, we have not yet received a response to that letter. I know we heard someone testify that that is obviously disappointing. And we've had conversations, and we do anticipate a written response shortly. So with that, Manager Waddell, and also to the extent with which City Attorney might comment on other subsequent action by the council. Please.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors and members of the audience. So yeah, the question on kind of the timing on where we're at with a response from Scott County, I did contact Scott County Administrator Leslie Vermillion earlier this week asking that very question on what the timing and status was of a response. She let me know that they anticipated getting us a response by the end of this week. So our intent was to wait and see what that response is, and then we will bring that back to the City Council, and then we can talk about next steps based on what is included in their response. Discussions of a moratorium could be on the table. We've broached that topic with the council already and with our city attorney. There are pros and cons with the moratorium. If a moratorium could potentially apply because the facility is not licensed, right? The county's not, if they chose to be state licensed, there are state statutes that protect those uses, in which case we could not have a moratorium against a state licensed facility. So we don't want to do something that inadvertently takes away our ability to negotiate and have conversations that are meaningful with the county on how this house might get used. So there's a lot of work that still needs to happen on this, and just know that we're going to be having those conversations with the council right away next week, as soon as we get the response here at the end of this week, and we'll talk about where do we go based on what the county comes back to us with. So that's really where we're at.
Thank you, Manager Waddell. And indeed, certainly being here, not having concreteness, right? The clock is ticking. The days are going by. I also trust, indeed, that you've been in close communication, as you are with us, with the Scott County Board and with commissioners. Because certainly there have been multiple conversations. I've had multiple conversations with administration, with commissioners, and indeed, I can say we have been heard. Council, I don't know if there's any additional comment you might like to make, because I know that each of you has been also involved in those conversations, not only with the county, but also with the neighbors, and certainly provide you with the opportunity should you desire to make comment. If not, I would move along to item 3 on our agenda.
Real quick, Mayor. I would like to direct staff this evening to draft a moratorium, but I don't believe that would be supported at this time by the rest of the council, and my apologies for that. You continue to come here and expect action, and you're not receiving it. I don't see the harm in directing staff to simply draft what a moratorium might look like for us to discuss internally here and have ready to vote on at our next meeting. It certainly helps the clock. It is a shot across the bow with the county, and it is okay for us to disagree with the county on policy. I'm not afraid to do that. The commissioners are all close associates of mine, good friends, and people that I can continue to work with on other issues. We just don't agree on this particular public policy that I believe is flawed. But I don't believe that there's support to direct staff at this time to draft a moratorium, a statement on what that would look like. Is that correct? Okay.
Mr. Burkhardt, if you'd like to advance such a thing, I'd encourage you to make a motion.
I'll make a motion directing the staff to draft a, what a moratorium might look like for us to pursue as a council, to look at our next meeting regarding the treatment of reentry homes in our community. Is there a second?
I would, not seeing a second, the motion dies for lack of a second. I would like to comment and take issue with Mr. Burkhardt. In all things government, all things humankind, there are relationships. There are relationships where you look to advance things. So the thought that I would not want to go too long on this conversation, because what a quote-unquote shot across the bow, if that's the intent, shot across the bow, that does not bring about the change that this council's asked for in our letter. We've asked for a reconsideration. A shot across the bow, posturing, saber rattling, is not the way you advance change. So that would be my comment, should the motion have found a second to speak in opposition. With that, I would like to move along to a motion on the approval of the agenda.
So move, Burkhardt.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Burkhardt, a second by Councilmember Churchill on approval of the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. That motion carries. That brings us to the meeting minutes, and that is meeting minutes for the January 4th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Councilor, are there any modifications, additions, edits you'd recommend for those? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve as submitted.
Move to approve the meeting minutes for January 4th.
Burkhardt seconds.
Motion by Councilmember Churchill, second by Councilmember Burkhardt. All those in favor say aye.
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 That motion carries. That brings us to the consent agenda. I'd like to hand this off to City Manager Waddell to lead us through consent agenda as well as those items before us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, and members of the audience. Our consent agenda is for those items that are considered routine or non-controversial. They're placed all together on the consent agenda. So unless the mayor or a councilor asks for an item to be removed for separate consideration, they're all approved together under a single motion, a second, and a vote. If an item were to be removed from tonight's consent agenda, it would be placed under item 10 on the agenda. Tonight we have the following items on consent. Approval of the claims listing, approval of the December 2022 building permit summary report, approval of the December 2022 animal control services report, resolution approving a temporary liquor license for the VFW wine tasting February 2nd, 2023, resolution approving a temporary liquor license for the Prior Lake Association February 4th, 2023 event, a resolution approving a temporary liquor license for the DAWG Nation Hockey Foundation February 17th through the 19th of this year event, a resolution approving state aid advance request, resolution approving a purchase of supplemental rifle armor for the police department, resolution of authorizing the advertisement for bids and authorizing the pre-ordering of equipment for the Wilds Quaker Lift Station Rehabilitation Project, City Project 2022-24.
Thank you, Manager Waddell. Councilor, are there any items before us on the consent agenda that you'd ask be removed to be undertaken item 10 this evening? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for the approval of this consent agenda as submitted.
So move, Burkhardt.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Burkhardt to approve the consent agenda, second by Councilmember Lake. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. That brings us to item 6, which are our police and fire updates. And we have Fire Chief Steinhaus addressing us first. Chief Steinhaus, we look forward to your report.
Oh, there it is. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for having me this evening to go over our numbers from the fourth quarter of 2022, September 1st to December 31st. Let's see here. So not much has changed here. We are staying pretty status quo with our paid-on-call firefighters. That number hasn't changed much, thankfully. So speak to the full-time transition a little bit before we go into the numbers from the last quarter there. This is just a quick little visual of our timeline. So last week, January 11th, we did have an open house for our internal candidates, the paid-on-call firefighters that are already employed with us. So we had a good turnout, probably 15 or so of that number. Several of them are qualified to, and some were there just for the information part of things. So it was good to see a good group of people there, a good number of people there. So as we go to the end of the month here, the job description and recruitment flyer and video will be posted. As we move through February, we'll have another open house on the 11th for external candidates. That's still kind of in the planning stages because we're not exactly sure how many people are going to show up. We hope many, but so we'll have to see where that goes. So then February through March, we'll be reviewing the applications, doing the conditional offers, agility testing. Moves us into May and June for the employment physicals and other testing, and then July 2nd, starting employment. And that sounds like it's 100 years away, but it feels like it's going to happen all tomorrow at once. So it's moving along pretty quickly. So September 1st to December 31st, so the fourth quarter of 2022, we stayed pretty current or pretty in line with 2021. Nothing major. Our February, or our December, I'll get to that. Our December numbers climbed up a little bit, but stayed pretty constant through both years. Again, our medicals, they just keep climbing. That's just kind of a given, and I think that's going to continue. As you've heard me say many times, it's we're assisting the police and the police departments and the sheriff's department, as well as Alina more and more every day with how busy they are with their duties as well. So our total calls for service over that quarter again stayed pretty consistent. No big jumps there. So total calls for the year 2022, 676. So we were up quite a bit from the previous year. I did look at our non-emergency calls for service. So with this included, we did just about 1,200 calls for service for the year, and that includes the emergency numbers, but then non-emergency when you go into burn permits and alarm inspections and investigation and insurance inquiries and such. So it was a busy year for us. So with that, I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, thanks. Have a great night.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and members of the audience, I appreciate an opportunity here to give you our update, not only quarterly, but over the year here. First of all, to start off with staffing-wise, we were able to transition through the retirement of Chief Frazier and my own movement up into that police chief role, and so I'm appreciative of the chance to serve in that regard. As we continue to talk most importantly about our staffing moves, We'd had the intent to add a full-time position of our property and evidence custodian in 2022, and as I'll talk in just a minute, in our hiring for police officer, as hiring goes in any domain, it becomes continuously challenging to try and finalize those processes. But we are right now in the final process for that evidence custodian, and we're looking forward to adding that position, which will increase the effectiveness and efficiency of the agency. As far as our sworn staff, we, through the end of 22, authorized to 33 sworn staff. As we sit today, we have 3 openings and a 4th anticipated with a retirement coming up. We're in the final backgrounding phase for 1 candidate, and I offer that only as an indication, again, of the difficulty in finding truly excellent candidates for police officer and then vetting those out, as really all agencies across the state are fighting over a same small pool of excellent candidates. So we continue to work diligently to fulfill the needs not only of the citizens for calls for service, but the support of council and city in terms of being at the best staffing levels we can, and we'll continue in those efforts. As we look at some of the statistics, September through December, we've broken apart some of those that are of most interest generally to citizens, city, and council. And so I won't go directly into each one of them, as I like to see, especially in the persons crimes areas of assaults, domestic assaults, as you've seen in that quarter, just a slight downward move, which is excellent again as they're persons crimes. As we look at these numbers, for instance, in the motor vehicle accidents, you see a small jump up. Certainly anytime there is an increase in those stats, we're always looking to see if we can identify any reasons, whether that be roadway specifics, driving specifics, any sort of other metric or reason we could maybe move to then address. And as we look at these numbers, any that have increased, we have not seen or identified anything specific that would tell us, either as a city or the police department, this is an area that we need to focus in. But as always, we'll keep an eye on those things. Again, as you look through, again, persons crimes, with regard to criminal sexual conduct, again in the quarter, a downward decrease, which is also excellent. We do have a good place to speak just for a second on context. You'll notice just specifically in robbery, we see a single uptick in robbery. And I would just caution anyone, when you see numbers, even if they just jump by 1 or a couple, when it comes to police services, there's always context behind why a number might be a certain way. A citizen may call in a call for service, and it's called as one thing. The dispatcher will code it as that, and generally because of state and national rules on record keeping, it may remain that way, even if we find the case turned into something different. And so while you might see a burglary increase or a robbery increase, it'd be really important to have more discussions on why those things might have been titled that way. So. And then we look at statistics year over year. Again, we look at some of those downward movements, which is excellent in those persons crimes. And I would draw attention in one area that we can probably look for a real good opportunity to partner not only with our residents, but continue into the police services. If you look at the burglary numbers jumping from 23 to 38 over the year, it's an interesting dive if you look at the context. Many of those cases called or titled burglaries were items taken from garages, oftentimes garages that weren't necessarily fully secured or as secured as they could be. Sometimes we'll call them crimes of opportunity, where a garage door might be inadvertently left open or unsecured. It's a great area for us to help educate our citizens, just doing some of those simple things like keeping garages more secured where you can. We can certainly offer more advice and thoughts and ideas on how to secure them even better. And it's a great opportunity for the police department to increase our neighborhood awareness by getting out, having a presence, and if for nothing else, perhaps someone being in an area that they shouldn't be might move them along to a different area. So just one area I wanted to point out that gives us a great chance to potentially impact some of those numbers. So with regard to any of those, I certainly welcome any conversation or questions from the mayor, members of the council, or if, for that matter, members of our public would like to dive deeper. We're always happy to have those conversations also.
Thank you, Chief Dugan. Council, any questions for the chief? Welcome.
The opportunity.
And thank you so much for your report this evening. With that item, let's move along to new business, resolution authorizing city manager to establish a slow no-wake zone on Lower Prior Lake on Saturday, September 9th, 2023. Manager Woodell.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors and members of the audience. This is a unique council agenda item that we don't get very often. So as the mayor mentioned, this is a request for a no-wake zone for a specific date in September, and this was at the request of the Midwest Show skiers, and we have a representative with us here in the audience this evening if you have questions after I'm done with my presentation. But the basis really for the proposed no-wake zone on that specific date from 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. is to make an attempt at the world record for the largest water ski pyramid. The current record is 93 water skiers, so they're proposing to break that record, and what a fun thing for it to happen on Prior Lake. So to facilitate that type of an attempt, they of course need to have a large area of the lake confined to no wake. There's going to be coordination with the DNR and the Sheriff's Department, both of which have been contacted already in anticipation of tonight's council agenda. We also had conversations with the Prior Lake Association, and I see we have Woody Spitzmuller from the Lake Association in the audience here tonight too. All parties that we've talked to have been in support of the event. There are still details and things we need to work through as we get closer to that date, which we would ultimately bring back. But what we're asking council tonight for is the authority to grant it to me as the city manager to declare the no wake for that specific day, which per our city code, we do have that authority to make that commitment for a no wake in this situation. So with that, I would open it up for any questions that the council might have, or if you have any questions from our applicant.
Thank you so much, Manager Waddell. Council, any questions? Councilmember Lake.
Would the lake be closed then for public between those hours?
So the portion of Lower Prior Lake from Reed's Island to the north would be basically kind of, yeah, it would not be available to others to be boating around in. They would need that space to make that attempt. And unless you have further, you want to come up, mister? So we have Mike Thibault from, that's the applicant, and he can maybe provide additional context.
So just clarification, it would be a no wake in that part of the lake. It would still be accessible to the public. So we'd just be looking to keep the boat traffic down. We will have buoys marking the course, and we'll be asking boats to stay out of that. So we do welcome residents as well as just anybody that's on the lake to come and anchor up and watch the event. It's a pretty amazing feat to try to witness, and it's a pretty fun day. So it will be still accessible, so people can still, anybody that lives on the lake could still drive their boats around that area.
Council, any additional questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Burkhardt. Comment?
I was just going to make a motion. But
please.
I would proudly make a motion, myself being a former show skier on our team and someone that hopes to be a part of this pyramid. I'll make a motion to approve the request for a slow no wake zone on a section of Lower Prior Lake for September 9th, 2023.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Burkhardt and a second by Councilor Lake. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries, and best of luck to you, Mike. Looking forward to it, and thank you. That brings us to item 9B, which is Lakefront Park Master Plan Adoption. And I can see we have Public Works Director Andy Brotzler and also Parks Director Hart. Look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It is with distinct pleasure to be here before you tonight with the final draft Lakefront Park Master Plan for your consideration for adoption. It's been a lot of hard work by a number of folks over the past year and several months, starting back in, I believe it was in August of 2021 that we kicked off this process with council to develop a master plan for the future vision of Lakefront Park. First, I'd like to just start out with a little bit of history about Lakefront Park and the timeline. This timeline's been shared through several communication efforts with the community. Interesting enough, you look back in 1980 as really the first step in developing Lakefront Park with the city's acquisition of property. The real last planning and major improvements that we see within Lakefront Park today occurred in the 1990s. One of the things in just looking at the history of the park that I found interesting as we moved through this process was the estimated population in the mid-90s for Prior Lake was just under 12,000. When you jump forward to today, where we're at, and a population pushing 28,000, that's more than double the use and demand within Lakefront Park. Looking through the more detailed steps for the planning process that we went through, we kicked this off in the fall of 2021 with a number of pop-up meetings to really just introduce the concept of the master plan process to the community. That was followed up with a online community engagement process later that fall to start to gain some initial input from the community about their vision, wants, needs, and desires for the future of Lakefront Park. Throughout the majority of 2022 then was the real work to develop the concept plans with a second round of community engagement occurring last spring, in the spring of 2022, where several concepts had been vetted by the council, and a preferred one was then disseminated to the public with a lot of additional great feedback provided from the community through that online engagement process, to then arrive at the updated concept plan that we then presented at a public open house last summer, concluding that with a really a final presentation to council at a work session last fall, which we then gathered some further direction and feedback from the council to really guide us to where we are at tonight. And so I think really a big part of the process and focus in working on this master plan was the need for community engagement. And I think we achieved a high level of community engagement. I would like to thank the members of the community who really helped guide the direction of this plan and provided a lot of great input and feedback for the development of this plan. This is really a first step in the process to develop this plan and a vision for Lakefront Park. That's one of the questions in talking with members of the public throughout the process was, well, what's next? When are we starting a project? We don't know yet today. There's still a lot of work to do, but this is the first step in the process, and our anticipation is that through the rest of 2023, we're going to start taking that second step to identify a strategy for funding future improvements and a potential timeline for the implementation of those improvements. From just an overall master plan standpoint, one of the things that we had talked about that led to the initiation of the master plan process was the fact that without a clear direction and vision for Lakefront Park, the city's hands were kind of tied to really make any substantial investments into the park. So that was really the first step, was to develop the framework and guidance for the future vision of the park, so that as funding becomes available, or we have a number of outside organizations that have expressed interest in monetary donations or material or equipment donations, we now have at least a vision and a concept to refer back to be able to incorporate those potential improvements into a longer-term plan for the park. Obviously, community consensus and input is a significant portion. Being the city's largest community park, it's been referred to as the crown jewel of the city's 54 park system. It receives a lot of activity, a lot of traffic, a lot of use for a wide variety of purposes and activities. I think when we first tabulated the number of different recreational opportunities that exist today in Lakefront Park, I believe it was 38 different recreational opportunities that exist there. So it really serves a wide variety of experiences and opportunities for the community and beyond. And so really gathering and incorporating that community vision for the future of Lakefront Park was important. The phased implementation strategy is an additional component that is included within the Lakefront Park Master Plan as to what potential phasing could be for future improvements, as well as then estimated future costs associated with those improvements. Just a high-level overview of what the concept plan looks like, and then we'll break into some of the more specific areas within the park. But you can see there on the right-hand side the number of different opportunities and recreational experiences that are within the park.
As Andy said, you can see the preferred concept here. This preferred plan emphasizes the value that Lakefront Park is a park for families. Opportunities for events, recreational programming, beach improvements, potential skating ribbon, picnicking, new inclusive and accessible playground, a potential parade route are all geared towards that value that it's a place for families in our city. One of the main improvements includes the addition of the new east-west road in the park, and that circulation which connects Ridgemont Avenue to the heart of the park. The roadway gives emergency vehicles and an additional point to enter and exit the park in the case that one of the entries is blocked, for example, for a large event like Music Fest, which happens here. The new road will not only enhance circulation, but also provide additional parallel parking along the road near the skate park and the open fields. And then continuing that road to the west it ends in a drop-off with handicap parking proposed near Watsels Beach. That is meant to increase ADA accessibility to that part of the park, to the beach. Currently, beachgoers have a long walk from any of the existing parking down to the beach amenities. This can be especially cumbersome when hauling items to and from the beach with a family. In addition, the addition of the drop-off would allow guests to unload their belongings much closer to the destination, and also provide handicap parking to those who are unable to make the long walk from the existing parking in the park. So the enhancements to the park circulation help to make the park safer, more inclusive space for the visitors.
Thank you, Steve. Just moving into a couple of the specific areas of the park. The Prior Lake shoreline, one of the updates that has been made to the plan following the council's last review of the concept plan was scaling back some of the previously proposed improvements along the Prior Lake shoreline to Watsels Bay to really just utilize the existing trail system that is there today with an enhancement shown there by number 1 on the map there to create a sort of a view shed or a overlook of the lake area in that space. Steve referenced the proposed enhanced road driveway down to Watsels Beach, culminating in a turnaround there with some handicap parking to really try to improve the accessibility to Watsels Beach. As council may recall from previous discussions, due to some of the topography, terrain conditions that exist there, trying to go any further than this were just really cost prohibitive and unfeasible due to the steep uphill on the backside, and then obviously the lake on the downside. Watsels Beach itself was one area of the park that did receive a lot of comments and feedbacks from the community about proposed enhancements to Watsels Beach. You can see there the maintenance of the city docks that we currently have there today, both on the lakeside of Watsels Beach, the publicly accessible day access docks, and then on the backside of the beach, the city's private rental slips that we rent on an annual basis each year for up to 16 watercraft. Another thing that came through and is shown here and highlighted is enhanced amenities, specifically a restroom structure of some sort. I know there was a structure that was there previously that was removed in 2020 due to the failure of the retaining wall. A lot of that had to do, one, with the failure of the retaining wall, the cost to remedy that situation, as well as the fact that the existing, or the previous building that was there was out of code and would have required extensive updates to it. Moving up the hill there then to number 7, another thing that came through, and if you've been out in this area, you can see there's actually a foot track going down the hillside for some of the more adventurous park users to gain access down to the trail system in Watsel's Beach itself from that upper parking lot. But an item that came through the process was the proposed addition of a stair system in some manner to provide a bigger and better connection from the upper parking lot down to Watsel's Beach itself. And then again, adding some form of an overlook there off of the parking lot to try to provide additional connection to the lake. In the upper right-hand corner of the exhibit there, you can see a proposed tennis court and additional pickleball courts that are proposed. That is something that did come through strongly from community input, was the desire to maintain tennis courts as well as opportunities to add more pickleball courts in other areas of the community beyond the courts that are located in Spring Lake Park. Moving east into the park, into the north play area, some of the highlights here, number 9 would be a new playground, and as we've talked about and imagined throughout the concept plan, is really an expanded playground from what exists today, utilizing the topography maybe a little bit more than the current playground does, but also looking to expand this into an inclusive and adaptive playground so that it is providing recreational opportunities for all users of the park, as well as then anticipating maybe some age-appropriate themed areas of the park or of the playground in various segments within the playground. Then moving over to number 11 is the splash pad proposal, and again, that is something that I think an additional time through the community engagement process came through very strongly as a highly desired amenity within the community. And in working through the concept plan, it seems that incorporating that into Lakefront Park is probably the prime location for that amenity within the city's overall park system, and then being able to utilize the existing pavilion with some possible bathroom expansion opportunities within the pavilion there. Continuing into the South Play area, what we've kind of come to call the summer recreational area within Lakefront Park then, would be maintaining the basketball courts within Lakefront Park, but then also adding number 15 there, which would be a concrete poured in place skate park. That is something that the council has heard from several youth members of the community previously about their desire for enhancements to a skate park. This hopefully will go a long ways in at least identifying the potential opportunity for developing a more interesting and exciting skate park experience for the youth within the community. Steve mentioned then the new proposed road with the parallel street parking, so that is something that throughout the concept plan we did look at and took opportunities where appropriate to expand and increase parking opportunities, provide parking opportunities within closer proximity to certain amenities, but then also just recognizing that for the current use within Lakefront Park today, that is one of the challenges we see and hear about is at certain times challenges in parking. Continuing east into the park is what we are calling the winter use area. This area would be where the existing tennis courts are today for any members of the public here tonight or watching on TV. The winter use area would include the development of a new parking lot. We do show here in number 19 the ability to relocate the 2 existing hockey rinks to this location. However, another item that came through that could be an option would be the development of a skating ribbon in that location. Again, from past conversations, wanting to be very clear that not to put words in the council's mouth, but your previously expressed intent is that the city will have hockey rinks, and our intent from staff standpoint is we will have hockey rinks, if not here in Lakefront Park, elsewhere within the city's park system, recognizing the need and value of hockey rinks within the community. Along with that then, number 18 would be a warming house pavilion, a second warming house or pavilion within Lakefront Park, as well as other amenities for a patio and outdoor space there to provide recreational opportunities associated with the sledding hill and either the hockey rink or a skating ribbon at some point in time in the future. One of the concepts the concept that's been discussed throughout this process is currently today, Lakefront Pavilion is only available through rentals. It's not available to the public on an open basis. With this concept and development of an additional pavilion within the park, our vision would be that in the off-season of the summer, the winter use pavilion would be available for private rentals, while the current Lakefront Pavilion would be open and usable for the public and for restrooms. And then in the winter time, the winter pavilion would be open for the public for a warming house and recreational space there associated with the skating opportunities as well as the sliding hill. And the current Lakefront Pavilion would be the wintertime private rental space that we would envision within the park there. Moving a little bit south and west in the park to some of the more natural areas of the park, looking at opportunities to expand some parking there. You can see number 22 would expand parking parallel to the road. That would provide some parking opportunities for the fishing pier that is not shown here on the map, but is just down below the map on Little Pryor, that today really has limited access to it other than if folks are willing to walk a long ways from a parking lot within the park there. I should also note number 21 that highlights a third and fourth row of proposed additional parking to the existing parking there today. So again, opportunities to improve and increase the parking to meet the current and anticipated future demands within the park. Number 23, while there's really nothing specific that's envisioned, but is noted as a future concept within the natural area of the park, is the opportunity to consider developing a disc golf course. And that is something that we've, over the years, have received inquiries about that opportunity within the city's park system. And it is something that, from experience in other communities, that I think there is an opportunity to incorporate it into a natural area without a significant impact to the natural area itself. Actually, the topography and the natural area can add to the experience of the disc golf course. So that seems to be a good location for consideration of that in the future. And then number 20 there, we noted as a possible bandshell location for larger events. That is something that would be an opportunity either for city events or obviously for Lakefront Music Fest that is located within Lakefront Park each July. There could be an opportunity for that not to be the stage itself, but as we've talked through the process and talked with representatives from the Rotary who really lead the Lakefront Music Fest effort. It could be the building blocks for then the performance stage that is utilized for Lakefront Music Fest. And then lastly, just highlighting the different potential phased areas that we may consider for improvements. And I think that'll be something that we'll have to delve into a little bit deeper as we start to identify future funding strategies for what the scope and scale of a first phase project may look like. Some of that may be dependent on where potential outside funding sources come from related to improvements within the park there. I won't go through each of those in detail. I know the council's seen that before. And this plan or this exhibit is also a part of the concept plan that once adopted by council will be posted on the city's the city's webpage, so it will be accessible for the community to go to that page and review the entire final document for Lakefront Park. So with that, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge also the advisory committee that was formed, consisting of 12 members of the community, ranging from several youth members who are also members of the CEC, but several CEC members, organization and association members, and then several resident members that met and worked on this process on 3 occasions and provided a lot of great guidance, feedback, and sounding boards for really trying to identify what a plan would look like that would be in alignment with what the community's goals and values were for Lakefront Park. So with that, I will move to the last slide. I already went through the process there, but then the recommended or requested action for the council would be a motion to accept and adopt the Lakefront Park Master Plan. And with that, we'll stand for questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Director Brotzler and Director Hart. Council, any questions for either Mr. Brotzler and or Mr. Hart? Councilmember Burkhart.
I think we just need to make it clear to the public that tonight we're looking at the master plan, but we are not looking at spending $20 million this evening. That is a conversation in the future for another day. But I did want to compliment the staff and our community for the process that we've gone through here. We have a tremendous asset in the heart of our community. It is dated. It does need a reboot. It's in need of a facelift, and I look forward to seeing how we can make some, if not all of this, a reality in the future. And we're committed to the same thoughtful process with our community around funding for this and how we go about it. So just know that my feeling is that we're going to take our time on this and be quite exploratory about it as we go forward. So, but kudos to the staff and the community for the process thus far. I think we've landed on a very good potential product. Thank you.
Additional comment or question? I really can't add much more to what Councilmember Burkhart said relative to the. I mean, this has been. Well, I want to say this goes back and your timeline was there, all of good 2 years. So in regards to both good input from the community and frequent opportunities for engagement across multiple platforms, in person, virtual, pop-ups, farmers market, there was plenty of opportunity for all to implement or put their fingerprints on this plan. So with that, Council, I would entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to accept and adopt the Lakefront Master Plan.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Churchill and a second by Councilmember Burkhart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion carries. Excellent, Council. That brings us to our Councilmember liaison updates this evening. And with that, I would like to start off with Mr. Lake, Councilor Lake.
I attended the Scale General Meeting on January 13th.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Councilmember Churchill.
Thank you, Mayor. I had my LLE Housing Co-Chair meeting on the 5th. I attended Chief Frazier's retirement party on the 6th. And on the 9th, I had the Planning Commission meeting. On the 11th, the Chamber of Commerce Board meeting. And on the 13th, the Scale General Meeting and my agenda review.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Councilor Churchill. Councilmember Burkhart.
Mayor, members of the council, on January 6th, I attended Chief Frazier's retirement reception over at the Police Hall. On the 9th, at a Minnesota Valley Transit Association Management Committee meeting. Also on the 9th, the Orderly Annexation Committee meeting. Also on the 9th, the Suburban Transit Association Board meeting. On the 11th, the Highway 169 Corridor Coalition Planning meeting. And on the 13th, I had my agenda review. Thank you.
Excellent. On January 6th, I had Scale Exec, as well as attended former Chief Frazier's well-attended send-offs. January 9th, attended the Regional Council of Mayors meeting. On January 11th, spent the day in St. Paul calling on our elected in Scott County. Quite a busy day. Treacherous drive on those icy roads. On the 13th, I had the Scale General meeting, and then on the 16th, the Martin Luther King event here at the high school. That concludes my liaison updates. Manager Waddell, is there anything you'd like to add?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and councilors. If you may have noticed in the Prior Lake American this past weekend in the obituaries, Steve Pawnee's obituary was there. As we were reviewing the Lakefront Park Master Plan, he was the gentleman that came multiple times advocating for tennis courts. He also served on the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District Board, so I just wanted to let his family know that they're in our thoughts and prayers at this difficult time.
Thank you so much for that, Manager Waddell. With that, Council, that final motion this evening?
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Churchill and a second by Councilor Lake to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. The meeting stands adjourned at 8:12 p.m.
You won't be with your kids when it happens. Will they know what to do? Ready.gov